organizers with Equity and Transformation. Today, we also do have Shawnee Williams. I will go ahead and let her introduce herself. And then Rachel Ventura, who is the Will County board member that's helping push the resolution and propose the resolution, is with us, but she's currently on another call. So she's a busy woman.
I'm here.
She's here. Never mind. Take that back. I spoke too soon. So
you can unlock my video and I'll turn it on. Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're good. I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Shawnee Williams. I am a Will County resident, and I also work in the cannabis industry for a company called Illinois Equity Staffing. We focus on social equity, diversity, and inclusion from a human resources perspective. And I am here just as a stakeholder and an industry stakeholder as well.
And then I know, Rachel, I'm trying to get you access to the camera, but if you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself beforehand, either way.
Okay, sure. So I'm a Will County board member, District 9, which encompasses all of Crest Hill, some of Lockport, some of Joliet, a little bit of New Lenox, and a tiny bit of Plainfield. And I recently introduced a resolution. It has yet to be heard officially on committee, but it has been heard in the Democratic caucus. And that's the resolution I hope that we'll be looking at tonight. And I encourage everyone to contact their county board members and ask them to support this resolution. And I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty as we continue on. Thank you.
All right, we also have Nicole Laporte with Equity and Transformation and Alonzo Wahid, an amazing organizer with Equity and Transformation as well. We are all the ones that came together to put this presentation together because we really wanted to make sure that the community is informed on what we're trying to do and what this is and why it's so important. So having said that, I am going to jump right in to the presentation. All right, again, thank you for all of those, everybody that's joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out to be here with us tonight. Today, we're going to talk about the Will County Cannabis Tax Resolution and what it is and why it's important. So first question off the bat, we already know people are going to ask, what is the Will County Cannabis Tax Revenue Resolution? Quite frankly, it's a proposed resolution, as Rachel said, that aims to create a committee that would oversee the spending of incoming cannabis tax revenue. The idea is to help communities within Will County that were impacted by the war on drugs and mass incarceration. For me, I think context is key, so I always want to start at the beginning just to give a little information on how we got here and what's happened since then. So in May of 2019, the CRTA, or the Cannabis Revenue and Tax Act, was passed. And then January 1 of this year, 2020, recreational cannabis sales became legal, paving the way to where we are now in the debate of how we should use cannabis tax revenue that's being generated for various counties. So for all my Cardi B fans out there, the state of Illinois is making shmoney. This is true. And these little excerpts from newspapers kind of just further that story. You know, Illinois is shattering revenue projections. They're making a lot of money. Now with that, so is Will County. So Will County is projected to make $109,000. They made $109,000 in the first month of their marijuana tax revenue. Now, one of the important things that I do want to note is that the state of Illinois does provide money monthly to Will County, and that's actually $6,300 a month. Now, before anybody asks, well, what's the difference? The difference between the $109 and the $6,300 monthly is that the $6,300 comes from the state tax. Now that money is already earmarked for things that pertain to like public safety, policing, anti-crime. So that money can't be spent however the county wants to. That has to be spent specifically for certain things.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. So the money to date on the state side of the dollars is about $54,000. And although it does have very specific qualifications, that money right now goes into our corporate account and it will have to be divvied out. So as long as it's going to those specific allocations, it can be spent that way. The $109,000 that we got from June of 2019, that is the money that has yet to be allocated. But there's nothing saying that the resolution we're presenting here today can't dictate how both of those amounts are allocated, both the $109,000 or the $54,000 that we've taken to date up until September from the state dollars, other than that those $54,000 has very specific allocations to them.
Thank you for that, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. So again, to reiterate, what would the resolution do? Again, Rachel, feel free to jump in anytime. It would create a board that would oversee the spending of the cannabis tax revenue only on the county level. So here's why you should support the resolution, why it's really important. The state of Illinois created a map that outlines disproportionately impacted areas, or as we like to call them in the cannabis industry, DIAs. These zones were created to highlight parts of the state that were impacted by the war on drugs and over-policing due to cannabis, among other ailments. So I actually took a screenshot of the DIA map that's actually on the DCO website. And I specifically took a screenshot of this area because if you notice, this actually outlines Will County. Now, if you notice, again, the blue areas are DIAs. So Will County has a sizable chunk of area that qualifies as DIA. A lot of it pertains to Joliet, but there are outlining areas around Joliet. Bolingbrook has a nice little chunk. And I believe the city of Crete, where Shawnee is from, there's an area right here that's next to that on the east. And again, to be designated as a disproportionately impacted area, a census tract must have high rates of the following: arrests, convictions, incarcerations related to cannabis, among other qualifying qualifications, including poverty and unemployment. Now, what's the correlating factor is that these are areas that had seen increases in over-policing and mass incarceration as a result of the war on drugs. On top of that, the state also created an R3 map. Now, if you're not familiar with what R3 is a grant program that was created by the state of Illinois that comes directly from state cannabis tax revenue. Now, before anybody asks, well, why can't we just use a grant to help support these communities? That's because this money is not guaranteed. To get some of this money, an individual or an organization has to apply for the grant and has to win the grant in order to get some of that funding. But what the R3 map does do is it builds upon the information that's already been provided in the DIA map. So that's why you see some of these areas that do qualify as R3 areas. Noticeably around the Crete area, you have an increase of more zones, and there's an expansion around the Joliet area. Bolingbrook still stays the same, but these areas are areas that have high rates of gun injury, unemployment, child poverty, and rest again.
So I want to jump in here. If you kind of think of the tax dollars as going into buckets, you have the state dollars that are going to one bucket, and they have rules on that bucket. You have to spend the money based on those rules. Then you have a second bucket, that's the county money. That's where we have yet to have any rules placed on that bucket. And then the third bucket is still state dollars, but it's for the R3 program. They can only be spent in these areas that are highlighted on the map, and they have to be applied for. So what we're hoping is that the committee that we create here can go after all three of those buckets and utilize the money to its greatest potential. That doesn't necessarily mean they use it all in the same area or advise to use it in the same area, but that their goal is to try to maximize those dollars and use them in areas that we can get the most bang out of our buck. Obviously, if it's the R3 money they apply for, it has to be used in those areas, but that doesn't mean the county money necessarily has to, and then the state dollars, as long as they follow those rules. So there is multiple buckets here that they're pulling money from, and I know that makes it a little confusing, but I hope that helps simplify it.
Thanks, Rachel. It definitely is a lot of information coming at everybody at once. But that's what the teaching is for, right?
And I just want to add really quick. So for the R3, this is Shawnee. It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone lives in that red or pink area, that's it. So if you work in that area, or you go to school in that area, or you live in that area, you technically are, according to R3, affected. So you could live, say, in New Lenox, but actually go to school in Joliet, like go to, Joliet Junior College or something like that. And technically, R3 is for that area, whether it's someone going to school in that area, going to work in that area, or living in that area. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Shani. So why are these areas significant to Will County? Well, in Will County alone, there are 21 zones that qualify as R3 areas. Out of those 21, there are 6 areas that qualify as high needs, meaning they meet a certain threshold of suffering from those ailments that I previously mentioned at a higher rate. And doing a little bit of math, the United States Postal Service has a really cool tool that allows you to see their routes based on zip codes. And so you can actually get a breakdown of income and population. And so utilizing that tool, I did a little digging, and I found that there are approximately 9,000 Will County individual residents that reside within those 6 high need areas alone. That doesn't take into consideration the other zones that qualify as R3. So why are these areas significant? Again, part 2, the median household income in Illinois is around $64,000, right? Well, a large number of the areas within the defined DIA zone and R3 zones in Will County hover around $35,000 or less for a household income. And that's significantly less than the median. So that's where we come to community investment. Literally everybody wins. It's a little big bucket of win for everybody. And here's how it works. Injecting cannabis tax revenue into underserved communities can increase generational wealth, drive down crime, increase property value, halt gentrification, increase community retention, help close the wealth gap, and increase quality of area schools. And now this is where we come to you guys, the community, and everybody that's on this this call right now. We look to you guys for help, right? So we are actively circulating a petition in support of the Will County Cannabis Tax Resolution. Again, we will provide everyone with a copy of this presentation. So there is a link that's embedded into the presentation, so you can actually click on the petition and access the petition through that way. We would love for you to join the coalition and join us in what we're trying to do. If you please feel free to email us at info@eatchicago.org for any questions, concerns, or want some more information. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will make sure to get back to you in a timely fashion. The next thing you can do is obviously get informed. Again, there's a link here that will take you to the full resolution. I will say that the resolution is not in its entirety. There's still some things that need to be vetted. Rachel, again, if you want to jump in. But by and large, the resolution can be read in its full context. And we have the link here. Again, once we send this out, you'll be able to read that, the full resolution for yourself. And most importantly, we need you to share, download, share the video, talk to your friends and family. We will provide all these resources again for you to share. It's going to take a community effort to get this passed. It will be an uphill battle, but we really feel that there's a real big need for this resolution to be passed. We could have the opportunity to really bring some generational change and generational wealth into communities that have been underserved for a long, long time.
Yeah, I'll jump out a little bit. I am encouraging people to sign the petition and to send it. If you don't want to sign a petition, you can contact your county board members directly. The idea of this committee, you can read the full resolution, but there's 2 parts of it. The first resolution, the first part of it is the preamble, where it talks about the history of how our laws here in Illinois have affected the Black community specifically. Not to say other people were not affected, but some of these laws were intended very much to keep the Black community kept down. And so that is where we're talking about repairing the damage. More recently, those laws have been the war on drugs and redlining, but we've saw things all the way from obviously enslavement through the Black Code to Jim Crow era, and then moving into the war on drugs. And so the idea of the second part of the resolution is creating that committee. And I've suggested that we create a committee of 9 Black individuals. And that is why the preamble is on this resolution, is to show why the justification for an all Black committee. And the reality is that we've created the greatest wealth gap over 300-400 years of our Black and African American brothers and sisters because of the laws and policies that we have instilled. So in order to undo some of that damage, we need to start looking at shifting power first and foremost. We didn't initially think that this was going to generate a lot of dollars, but after our first month of bringing in the county dollars of $109,000, it is looking like there's going to be more money than we had initially anticipated. But the hope is that we use those dollars, as Alex had said, to shrink that wealth gap, which in turn helps everybody. Because if we all have better property values, you know, unfortunately, we're all paying higher property taxes. And so then the higher burden is not on people who have maybe a higher paying job or you know, one side or the other. Everybody's paying their fair share. But equally, then we don't have as many programs where people feel that they need to supplement their income. These are typically called social programs. So you know, people who tend to sway politically to the right feel like, oh, all of our tax dollars are going to social programs. Well, if we are instilling better opportunities for our communities, better job opportunities, better housing opportunities, then there's less social programs that need to be there. So, you know, in that capacity, we're spending less dollars there. We're instilling more dollars into empowering people to make their lives better and ultimately giving them more freedom. We want people to have the freedom to choose. We don't want people to feel like they have to choose a certain restaurant or choose a certain store because their dollars dictate it or because SNAP dictates it or policy dictates it. We want people to feel that they have the freedom to choose. And that is what some of this is about, is closing that wealth gap and making sure that the people who have been affected by these laws in the past have the voice and power to change that, to empower their communities so that everybody ends up being equal. I mean, to me, this is a step in equality. And we can't do that if we ignore our past history and if we ignore the problems. And that is not to say that other people have not been affected. And those are things that I hope the county board will have a healthy discussion of. But the truth of it is we won't have any discussion if they feel they can sidestep this and pass some other resolution on how to spend these dollars. That is when your voice, the community voice, is so important. So you have to get out there and send either send your name to the petition, send this to your friends and family, send an email to the county board, pick up the phone and call them. Because if they feel that this is not important to you, I guarantee that this will not be important to them, the representative. So I can't encourage you enough to spread this message. And the reality is we have a moment right now, a unique moment in history to change the trajectory that this country is on. There is one other city that has passed this, and that's Evanston. And they created a committee of their own board members, elected board members. What I'm suggesting we do is take one step further from what Evanston has done and create a committee of our community to how to spend this money, and that this can be duplicated then across this country. So while Evanston might have been the first city, Will County can be the first county, but the hope is that we are not the last state or last county or last city to pass this, and that really the sense ripples across this country. So if you want to be a part of the change that is happening in America today, this is our moment. This is the time to get involved, and I look forward to working with everyone who is excited as I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautifully said. And before we do open the floor to questions and answers, I do want to highlight the fact that we do have a large group of individuals that represent our religious communities. By and large, especially as minorities, especially Black and brown folk, we know that in our religious communities, cannabis, has been demonized. And but that's not a conversation that we're looking to have right now. We're not advocating for the usage of cannabis. What we are advocating for is the responsible spending of those cannabis tax dollars, just as Rachel highlighted. This cannabis tax revenue is a privilege that the state of Illinois enjoys, but that comes off the backs of Black and brown individuals who are incarcerated or who are no longer with us, unfortunately, due to cannabis-related violence of some sort. And so we really want to make sure that we are investing in the communities that have given the state of Illinois and, quite frankly, Will County the privilege to utilize this cannabis tax revenue. And so with that, I will go ahead and open the floor to a Q&A if anybody has any questions they want to ask of Shawnee, Rachel, or myself.
It looks like someone's asking for the
Yeah.
link for the actual resolution.
Yes, again, to reiterate, we will be sending emails to everybody that is on this call with us. So you will have access to the presentation. We will follow up with the video, and then you will have access to the document that contains the resolution itself in the language.
And then we have Alexandria. She's asking, can you speak to how the people that will serve on this oversight board will be chosen?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the resolution appoints these individuals. So the way that the county board currently appoints is that the county executive chooses a name, and then the county board approves that name, confirms it. It's not unlike, we have a executive form of government here in Will County, so it's not unlike how our president and the Congress then confirms when they do like judgeships, for example. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about this, about is there a chance for them to be elected, from being appointed? In order to be elected, we have to go through the state process. And so this, to me, this resolution is the first step. I don't anticipate that this resolution will be perfect. I think we will learn a lot. I will be interested in hearing more on how we can move forward if the appointment doesn't seem to be working as well. But this, again, gives you an opportunity to contact your county board member and let them know, yes, you agree with the people who are being appointed, or no, you do not. And so there isn't exactly public oversight, but the fact that we don't have a rein on money in our politics, you know, it does kind of sidestep the fact that anyone can buy their way to the top when it comes to elected positions. But I'm open for improvement. However, I think that this is the fastest way to get this resolution passed, is to have these positions appointed.
I see we already have a couple nominations.
Yeah, and so all of those, so there'll be there'll be an open process of applying. So our executive, any appointments for any position that the county board approves and appoints has to first be posted, and that's usually posted on our website. However, they are posted different times of the year. So obviously, if this is approved, I'm sure there will be a lot of newspaper stories about when those positions will be posted online. So people fill out a form saying why they're interested. There's it's not quite a resume, but there's, you know, some information about references and what you've done in the community and why you're interested in running for this position. Those are then, at some point, the executive looks through those and selects one. And then they present that name to the county board. We're giving that information, you know, a couple weeks out. It's added to our agenda, and then we vote on it. At any time, a county board member can ask to see all of the resumes and bring up. So in this case, it's a board of 9 that we've recommended. One of those board members, one of the committee members need to be an elected board member of the county board. The other 8 would then be selected at equal gender. So half women, half men. They would serve for 2 years. There's a maximum in there that they cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms, or no more than, I think it's 6 years if they were to take over someone else's term. So I hope that answers some of those questions. But again, all of these points could be negotiated before the resolution is approved.
We do have a couple questions in the Q&A. If you guys do have questions, please make sure to put them in the Q&A so I can keep track of all of them as they come in. So I do have a question. How does a county board member feel, or how do county board members feel about the resolution? That's from Livister Smith.
I think that's a mixed bag, and this is why we're encouraging people to reach out directly and have those one-on-one conversations. I think a lot of people have been hesitant to say one way or the other whether they support it or what parts they've supported it. There's only been some discussion in the Democratic Caucus, which is a public meeting and is on record. You can listen to the recording by contacting County Board at willcountyillinois.com. They can get you that information. But other than that, we had a small discussion on the legislative committee, also open to the public, but very few people spoke directly on whether they would be voting for this resolution or not. I do see another question about whether committee members need to slate a political affiliation. No, they do not. This would be considered a nonpartisan board.
We do have another question from Rex. I'm going to get to you in a second. But we do have another question from Elizabeth. Would greater consideration be given for individuals who have been directly impacted, such as returning citizens?
I guess I need better clarification. So this, is she saying for appointments to the board?
I think we might need some clarification with the question as well.
As far as the resolution,
Yes,
nothing
yes.
dictates, the only thing that dictates in the resolution is that the committee would be made up of 9 individuals. 1 individual would be a county board member, and the other 8 individuals would be equal sexes, gender, male and females, and that all 9 would be Black or African descendants. So other than that, it would be up to the executive to choose. So I would encourage individuals to put that information on their application. However, I want to be very clear that this resolution has not passed. So one of the reasons for this meeting is to get the support needed to go to the county board and ask them to support this resolution so that we can create this committee. I would hope that we would have people who were more directly impacted by the war on drugs, or descendants of slavery, or people who have dealt with the redlining laws, to be able to be a part of this committee so that they could have direct input on how best to spend these dollars. That is the intent of this resolution. However, if we don't get the support needed at the county board, we won't see this in the light of day.
Thank you for that, Rachel. And Rex, I believe Shawnee did address your question in the chat box. If you want to check that out. Thank you, Shawnee, for answering Rex's question. I do have another question from Charlie Kim. What should I do if our representative in Aurora is not responding and not cooperating to answering my questions? What is the best method to go to get a response from my representative?
I'm always a fan of doing things publicly. So writing letters to the editor of your newspaper is always a great thing to do. Some people like to use social media, Twitter and Facebook, to call those individuals out. I mean, I always think going to them directly through an email or phone call is a good way to go. But if you feel that that representative is not responding, you may want to help get the community involved. That's kind of the idea of this petition, is if you feel that you don't want to take that on yourself, you don't have to. We can bring other people on to help you. Alex, Nicole, and Alonzo here have all been very helpful. I'm sure Shawnee will get involved as well. So if there's areas, let's say you have an HOA or a PTA group or some other parenting group, or maybe your church wants to host some information about this, that's where our resources can come in. We're more than happy. Any one of us are happy to come out, speak to different individuals about what this resolution represents, and get your group the tools that they need to contact their county board member. So you feel that you don't have to get the blow off, that other people getting involved, putting the pressure on the county board member, eventually they're going to have to answer. And at the end of the day, if they choose not to, we have elections every 2 years. I encourage you to get involved in those elections, whether it's voting, or if you're not happy with the names on the ballot, run yourself or encourage those who you feel are qualified to run for office.
We have more questions in form. I'm trying to get through these. Here's one that I knew I was waiting for. Robert, how do we respond to those? How do you respond to those who still consider this a form of reparations? I'm gonna open the floor to all of us to talk. I will start with that. Listen, I mean, reparations have been paid to many communities. Reparations was paid to the Japanese American community post World War II for they were sent into internment camps and they were paid reparations. Reparations have been paid to communities, to minority communities in this country throughout our history. For me, as a person of color, as an Afro-Latino, I just don't understand when it comes to reparations to the Black community, why it's such a hot topic. Call it what you want. What I want to highlight is the fact that this tax that the Will County, and again, the state of Illinois, has the privilege of collecting comes from the backs of Black and brown individuals. Black and brown individuals were incarcerated or subjects of violence in regards to cannabis at way higher rates than our white counterparts. And so, if we're talking about equality, if we're talking about equity, these communities have afforded the state of Illinois to enjoy the tax revenue that they are enjoying right now. That $100 million came from somewhere. right? And these communities that the state has outlined were victims of over-policing as a result of the war on drugs and mass incarceration, afford the state the ability to have this money to utilize however it sees fit. So I think what we need to remember is that this was paid for us by other individuals, and those individuals primarily looked Black and brown. So I want to make sure that people understand that, that this is a greater conversation. It's about doing right by those communities that give us this possibility to spend this now. If anybody else wants to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I already kind of gave my piece at the county board meeting about this. A lot of people wrote emails, really nasty emails regarding this subject of reparations. First of all, I'm not a fan of that word, especially in this case, for a lot of different reasons. But at the end of the day, Alex has already really pointed out the main points. But when you look at the war on drugs, the people that were disproportionately affected, honestly, were Black and brown folks. What we have now in these disproportionately impacted areas that Alex pointed out to on the map are actually, it's a diverse area. So when you're looking at those areas that were red and blue in Joliet and Bolingbrook and whatnot, those areas don't just have Black and brown people in them. They actually have, believe it or not, some Caucasians in those areas. But when you talk about those areas that have been impoverished, they've also been over-policed. And so the suggestion of creating a board to really be thoughtful about where this cannabis tax revenue is coming or going, and being infused into the community to make sure it's for the greater good of the entire community and not certain parts of the community, I think that's where this resolution really is trying to focus on. I think folks that are focusing on the word of reparations when it's nowhere to be found in that resolution are folks that really need to look at within themselves and look at possibly some let's just say racist views.
And again, I mean, I think it's common math here. You know, we see that people want their property values to increase, right? Because that's a return on your investment. You bought that home, you want to sell that home at a greater price, right? That's your ROI. You're looking for a return on that investment, right? And now if you are in an area that is being affected by lower lower housing rates because, you know, there's a neighboring community that is underserved, it makes sense to inject this money into those communities because that will in turn assist those communities, increase community retention, and overall improve everybody's well-being at the end of the day. And so, you know, and if people get caught up on the word reparations and look at it from a business perspective, it's a good business deal to make the move to create the board that looks at overseeing this money and making sure that's spent in the community in a right way.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this. I mean, I know there's been a lot of discussions about the word reparations, and I would encourage people to look at what the resolution does, and that is creates a committee of 9 individuals who can advise the county board on how to appropriate the dollars. Our state legislator, at the end of the day, puts the responsibility of the county board to appropriate those dollars. Nobody else can spend that money except for the county board. So the advisory committee, you know, creating this tells us how they like to spend that money, but we would have to agree with that, or it has to go back to that committee for a different vote. So I want to read to you the definition of reparations, which is the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So in the spirit of this resolution, yes, one could say that this is, you know, reparations. But just like if I slash your tires and I have to go get you new tires, that is reparations for the damage done to your tires. The confusion comes in that there is a House bill for the federal government, House Bill HR 40, which is a reparations bill. And that is a check cut to those who have been affected by slavery. I think that's when people hear the word reparations, they think, oh, okay, we're cutting checks to people. At the end of the day, we're asking the committee to bring to us an idea. And that idea is only limited by the 9 individuals who make up that board, or if they're dictating the state dollars, what what requirements are on those dollars. But the county dollars are unlimited at this point. So if the board was to come forward and said, we want to cut a check for every Black individual, it's about 8,400 people who live in Will County, then the county board would have to approve that. So I don't think that's going to happen. Just by the money alone, it doesn't make sense. Also, in the resolution, it talks about how no amount of money can undo the damage that has been done through slavery. But slavery aside, there were plenty of things that we did right here in this state, from the Black codes to the Jim Crow era, to kicking people out or arresting them if they spent longer than 12 days in the state, to redlining, to the war on drugs, and a number of other things. Police brutality we're seeing today, and the list goes on and on. So at what point do we say our policies have wronged a community and we would like to repair some of those wrongs? We can never make up for it, but we can at least start to create some type of equality between economic populace, really, making sure we have good paying jobs, making sure we have equality in our homes, in our communities, make sure lighting is uniform across the board, roadways are uniform across the board. The fact that we have access to good colleges and high schools and elementary schools are equality across the board. These are things that are not new ideas. We've been fighting this from before the civil rights movement to the Civil War. But at some point, we take the next step. And this is us taking the next step. These dollars are not coming out of anyone's pockets other than those who are choosing to buy and purchase cannabis in the state. So they're not coming from your property tax dollars. They're not coming from your income tax dollars. They're not even coming from your federal tax dollars. These are chosen dollars spent when someone buys cannabis, and then those dollars can come to our county and be used in a way dictated by this committee if this resolution passes. So it allows us a unique opportunity where no one is going to be missing out. So all of the other responsibilities of government to create good, equitable schools, to create good, equitable jobs, to create good roadways are still there. What we're saying is, how about we give a boost to areas that have not been given those responsibility or those opportunities in the past when they should have been. So I hope we keep that in mind when we hear the word reparations, that we take it away from the wording and put it towards the context of what we would like to see. I personally would like to see a government that works for everyone. And I think that this is the way that we can make sure that we've undone some of that harm, not all of it, some of it, by closing that wealth gap and providing opportunities where they should have been provided all along.
Rachel, we got a question for you from Rex again. Rachel, do you feel the results of the election of, do you feel the results of the election of many Democrats to the board is beneficial to the cause, so to speak?
I actually think it has no effect. I think that the people who are in these seats today will have to make their decision based on the constituents who live in their districts, on their own moral compass, and the pressure that is put on them from their community. I don't think the wider election had any results on this this resolution.
Thank you, Rachel. Do we have, are there any other questions anybody might have, the community might have? Please do not hesitate. And do remember, if you are not comfortable, asking a question in public, we will provide that email. So you can ask any question via the email address. Again, to reiterate, this video is being recorded. It will be made available at a later date. In the meantime, once this is done, we will follow up with an email. Everybody that's been that has participated or just registered with us, you will get a copy of this presentation, as well as access to the resolution as it stands. All right. Seeing that I don't see any more questions, and I hope we answered everybody's question to the best of our ability. Yep, and Nicole, thank you, Nicole. So we do have she did put the email in the chat. So again, if you guys have any questions, I think I got one more. Rex, let's see, Joe Biden supports a national, okay, here you go. Joe Biden does support a national legalization of cannabis. Any comment on that?
Yeah, it's no secret that I recently ran for Congress and that I am in support of legalizing cannabis, more so decriminalizing it and making sure that those dollars do go into repairing some of that damage, both in expunging those records, making sure that we have restorative justice for those who have been wronged, and somehow integrating them back into the community, whether it's through house programs or work programs or some other transitional methods. I would hope that Joe Biden's program is as extensive as one that I would foresee, but I guess we have yet to see how he will act on that.
Yeah, and if I can, if I can piggyback on that, I think it's time we have that serious conversation on national legalization. We see that the war on drugs is very problematic for a lot of communities, specifically those of color. Over policing cannabis is still a problem, even in legal states. So I think it's time that we seriously, when we talk about defunding, right? I think this is what we talk about. We're not saying defund. We're talking about reinvesting those funds in a different direction that are going to give impacted communities an opportunity to do better, to be better. And I think this is one of those conversations. I think national legalization is a step in the right direction. Any last questions before we close out? All right. Well, seeing that there are none, I want to take a second to thank Shawnee Williams. She is amazing, and she's been in the cannabis industry for quite some time, so she is a wealth of information. I also want to thank Rachel Ventura, board member on Will County Board, for pushing this resolution. She's been a great ally and a big help in making sure that this is visible and really helping us with this experiment. I also want to thank Nicole Laporte. I also want to thank Alonzo Wahid with Equity Transformation for putting this together. Again, all this information will be made available to everybody that's on the call. We did post the email, so if anybody has any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. So thank you so much, everybody, for being on the call with us. We hope that you're able to walk away with immense information and knowledge, and help us get this done, because you're going to need it. It's a community effort. It's going to take a village. So thank you guys, and please enjoy the rest of your night. Take care.